Welcome into the Bork Report here on Bork News Network. My name is Bork, your host, and today we've got a great run of show. This is kind of the episode one. I know I've put out one more episode before this. That was for the Switch 2 release trailer last week. Felt that was a special enough episode to start this whole thing off. This is kind of the inaugural episode of what you can more so expect for the weeks to come as I continue doing this. So think of this as kind of a soft relaunch of the podcast, even though it's less than a week later. I just had to get that Switch 2 announcement trailer out there. That was very important stuff, and that was kind of what I wanted to launch around, anyways. But today's run of show, you can expect a couple different segments. The first thing I want to talk about is my 2024 gaming in review, kind of just talk through the 10 best games I played in 2024, not necessarily released in 2024. Just wanted to give you some of my thoughts, opinions, just so you can see my gaming taste, see where I'm going with what I kind of like to play. That way, in future years, when you see this, you kind of know, hey, this might not all be 2024 releases or this year's releases, but there should be a solid slate of games. Second thing I want to touch on today as far as topics go is the Nintendo Switch 2. I want to kind of follow up on that conversation from the initial episode, and I want to discuss a couple things. First thing, what I think the launch window looks like. When do I think it's going to launch? And then what do I think Nintendo is doing for the rest of this year as well? Obviously they still have the Switch 1. All Switch games will be compatible on the Switch 2. Not all of them. They had that disclaimer in the end of their launch trailer, but all of the games that most people would care about will be cross compatible. So what do I think might be a cross-gen release versus what do I think is a Switch 2 exclusive? Just want to give some opinions on that as well. So some housekeeping before I jump into the main topics. What is this and why should I care about this show? Well, the what is this is just something that I wanted to do. I wanted to hop on here and start discussing video games. Like I said in episode one, if you happen to catch that, is that I love talking about video games. It's the thing I'm probably most passionate about. I have a lot of great friends. Not many of them share the love that I do to the point where I can have a deep and meaningful conversation about it with them. So really just wanted an outlet to talk about it. And why should you care? You shouldn't. I don't give a shit if you care. This is more so for my personal gratification. Just want to get my voice out there in the world. I want to, look back in 10 years and watch one of these and be like, oh, that was so awesome. I remember playing that game. Or, hey, that's a really interesting topic to look back on a year later. Really, I'm doing this for myself. If I gain 0 followers, 0 subscribers, I'll continue doing it. This is just something that I am going to plan to do now. If you guys want to come along for the ride, feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that YouTube BS. I'll also try and plan to, post some stuff on TikTok now that that ban has been reversed for the time being, as well as YouTube Shorts, things like that. I'll catch people in every place. If anyone shares these opinions and really likes what I have to say, again, I would really appreciate you follow me, subscribe to the channel, whatever it may be, and don't hesitate to comment. I will be looking at and trying to respond to any and all comments. That's the whole point of this, is I want to have conversations about gaming, whether it's me talking into a camera by myself or whether it's me responding to comments, connecting with people on social media, following people on, Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be. I just want to have greater conversations about games. So the schedule going forward, I'm recording this on a Monday, and I recorded the last one on the Thursday of the Switch 2 reveal. I definitely want to get consistent about this, and basically what I'm trying to say is, going forward, my plan is to record and release episodes on Saturday. If I do not release it on Saturday, it will be recorded Saturday and released Sunday. But, I have a full-time job. I do other things outside of this. So Saturdays and Sundays usually are my best days to get things done. So going forward, you should be able to expect an episode on Saturday or Sunday. I'll try and be consistent about which day I post. If I decide to stick to Saturdays, I'm going to try and get those episodes out on that day. If I decide this next episode is going to go out on Sunday, I might just record Saturday and release every episode on Sunday. So That's kind of what you can expect from this going forward. And then without further ado, I just want to jump into my first topic, which, like I said, is just recapping 2024. I played not a crazy amount of games, but I had a really fun time playing video games in 2024. Uh, I'm not the guy that's looking to purchase new releases right on launch all the time. There are certain series and certain games that will get me there on launch day. But for the most part, I'm just playing what I have time to play when I have time to play it. I'm sure that's kind of the case for a lot of people out there outside of me. So, first thing I want to say is go play the backlog. It's the whatever you thought about playing or whatever you wanted to play in the past, but you haven't, and now you feel like it's too late. No, the hell it is not. It is not too late to play those games you've missed out on. And those are a majority of the experiences in 2024 that I remember the most. There's a couple new releases that will be on this list. But for the most part, I've been playing games from 5, 10, 20 years ago, really enjoying those, and really having that occupy my gaming space has been great. Same thing that I'm doing in 2025. I'm playing some re-released games. I'm playing some older games. I have a couple new titles in 2025 that I'm really looking forward to. I'll probably have that be a segment maybe next week on Saturday or Sunday's episode, just to discuss 2025, because if you didn't know, it's going to be a very big year for gaming, and that'll kind of tie into the Switch 2 conversations that I have as well. So let's go into the 2024 games. The first thing I want to say is, as an honorable mention, it's not going to make my top 10 list because I have played this for years, but number 10 on my list, not number 10. My honorable mention before number 10 is going to be Stardew Valley. So, Stardew Valley, as many people know, released a 1.6 patch update last year. Concerned Ape, after years of working on this game, has released a new update as of last, I think it was January or February, I can't quite remember. That added a ton of new content to the game, and this game since about 2021 has been a very comforting game for me. It's obviously a lot of chores and work and time management, but aside from all of that, it's cozy to me. And when 1.6 dropped, I thought that was a great opportunity to start up a new farm. And in that process of starting a new farm, I put probably 120, 130 hours into the game. And I plan to go back to that farm to try and achieve perfection at some point. But with other games that came out last year, I stopped playing eventually after probably a solid month of only playing Stardew. Went to other games, and honestly, it kind of hindered my list in 2024 as far as the amount of games that I was able to play. So whenever I get back into Stardew Valley to go for perfection, I really need to manage my time better and and look into how to make it a better experience while being able to manage other games on top of it. So that's my number, not even on my top 10 list. It would be up there, probably towards the top 3 or 4 if I were including on this list. But because it is not, I've decided to run away from that side of things, and instead jump into my actual top 10 list. Let me type this here. So number 10 on my list for 2024 games. This has actually changed in the last couple months, with a couple of the games that I beat towards the end of the year. They jumped up some slots on my list here, and I excluded Stardew Valley from my previous list that I'd made back in December. But number 10 on my list is Animal Well, a 2024 release from published by Big Mode, developed by Billy Basso. A single person made this game. Metroidvania style game. If you have not played it, you're basically this little blob that's exploring this well, and there's a lot of mysteries to uncover, and just kind of the exploration aspect of the game is really cool, where you'll find an item that is just this generic household toy or things along those lines, like a bubble wand, a frisbee, and those will help you solve puzzles that help you unlock rooms that you previously weren't able to access. There's a lot of freedom in the way you explore this game. I've talked to some people that have beat puzzles that I was not able to, without the items that I was able to grab. They didn't grab those items and were still able to beat those puzzles. So, Animal Well number 10, really cool game. The fact that it was designed and built by one person is just phenomenal. Same with Stardew Valley being developed by one person. Just a feat that I don't think a lot of people fully will give credit to, just how hard that is. But nonetheless, it was an amazing experience. I highly recommend Animal Well. It's pretty cheap on Steam. You can buy it on Switch. I think that might be one of the best places to play it. And obviously, any other system, PS5, it's on all of those as well. So jumping into number 9, I know there was a release this year for this game, a sequel to it, at least in early access, but I have not played that yet. Instead, I jumped into Hades for the first time this year. And really what was cool about Hades was just how replayable it was. Even like seeing that, it all kind of looks similar. The enemy variety doesn't change run to run. The way you go about it with the different upgrades, the different boons, the different gods and goddesses that you interact with on a run-to-run basis was really cool. And then obviously the different weapons you can use to escape the underworld as you play as Hades' son, Zagreus, trying to escape the underworld to find your mother. That's the essential premise of the game. There's really great writing, really great voice acting in this game. There's way more to do than I've done in this game. I've sunk, probably 20 to 30 hours into this game, and I've escaped multiple times, and even so, I know that there's way more dialogue that I haven't seen. There's way more upgrades that I haven't gotten to. But just really the ability to go into each run and kind of have that be a unique experience, even if it is the same exact pathing, not pathing, but you go through the same 3 or 4 worlds to get to the end. And it just feels so new, so fresh each time. Really cool game. That would be my number 9 for the year as I look into that. And one thing you'll notice as I walk through this is that a lot of the games I played this year are indie games. That was something that I really wanted to emphasize and kind of jump into more. It's in the past, before 2024, I don't think I'd really jumped into indie games or indie titles too much. And if you aren't doing that, if you're only buying AAA releases or AA releases from big companies, you really are missing out on a lot of really cool gameplay mechanics and, most importantly, some really cool storytelling that's missed by playing these indie games. So something I'll note, there's multiple others on this list that are indie games. There's a couple AAA releases, but play some indie games, people. Damn, they are cheap on Steam. They're less than $30 for the most part. And they will give you some of the most profound experiences that you will have in video games. So, jumping into number 8 on my list, another indie title from 2022. It's Tunic. This is basically a Legend of Zelda-like game. As you can tell from the artwork, if you've never played this before, it looks like a little fox version of Link, and that's essentially what it is. You play in a kind of a top-down formula in this really pretty art style. Let me see if I can enhance this image. But here we go, a little gameplay action for you there. Really pretty art style. Really cool boss fights. Not going to play any volume here as to distract from my talking about it, but the main mechanic of this game, as you just saw like 10 seconds ago, I don't know if they'll show it again. I'll jump back. Is, as you can see here, they're kind of clicking and flipping through a manual. So as you explore this world, as you can see the world in the back of this manual here, you will collect additional pages to this manual. And while you don't understand the language necessarily, some of the pages you can read the words, but for the most part, it's this kind of cryptic language. What's really cool is that it shows you and kind of explains to you in an off-put way how to do different things or how to access different areas that you could have accessed from the start had you had the knowledge. but you did not. And it really makes a second, third, fourth playthrough of this game really rewarding. I know that there's a specific speed run mode. I didn't really take much stock in that mode myself, but there is a speed run mode in this game that times your completion. So as you know the rules of the game, know the rules of the manual, you will be able to then progress the game much faster. You learn enemy patterns, you learn this, that, the other thing. There's certain input codes that you would really only get on, like, 2005 internet forums, someone telling you how to do it. It's not something that's easily explained to you. And that's what makes it feel so special, is that having the manual to this game really unlocks a whole world of possibilities. And then on top of that, the art style being what it is was super amazing. Really awesome. I would love to have them make more styles of this game. Finji, the publisher, and the Tunic team there really put out an awesome game as far as, secrets and making you feel like you're playing like a 90s Zelda game again, where not everything is straightforward. You kind of have to figure it out yourself or read a manual to figure out these special tricks. So that's my number 8 on this list. And jumping back to kind of myself here, The Legend of Zelda is probably my favorite series of all time, which is why this specific iteration really resonated with me. It really hits hard. The best Zelda game I played in 2024, and I played Echoes of Wisdom. It did not make my top 10. I loved Echoes of Wisdom. I just didn't think it was quite as good as what Tunic brought to the table when I played that. So just know you're not seeing Echoes of Wisdom on my top 10 list. I loved playing as Zelda. I loved the puzzles in that game, but overall, not going to make my top 10 list. Number 7 is a game that released for the PlayStation 4. It is a first-party game. It is Ghost of Tsushima. I played that for the first time this year. I played the director's cut on the PS5. Holy hell, this game was really cool. I think that this game got repetitive with some of the side missions and kind of the exploration aspects, but where it maybe faltered in those areas, it really enhanced itself with the visuals. It's maybe one of the most gorgeous games that I've ever seen. As well as that, the story in this game, I think the main story, while not being super revolutionary, still kind of struck a chord with me in ways. I thought it was really cool. Just the whole invasion from the Mongolian Empire and the Khans, how he decided to deal with it or be killed, basically. And even through all of that, knowing the stakes is that it's either kill or be killed, to still be outcast by your system of honor and your code of the samurai at the end of the game was really cool to me, and how he still decided to go against that, even though that's the way he'd been raised. So really cool game. I don't think that there's much I can critique on this outside of just being a little repetitive in areas. I mean, it's a phenomenal game. Really, really cool. Number 6 is another indie game. Surprise, surprise. This year I played the game titled Celeste for the first time. And basically, Celeste is just a 2D pixel art platformer. It's really challenging, yet really fair and really rewarding. When you mess up, you know why you messed up and you know how to do better. It's just a matter of learning and becoming better. And really the story of this game is probably what sets it over the edge. I think it's a really, really great platformer. I think the platforming mechanics are probably about as good as I felt in any 2D platforming game ever. But then they couple it with a nice story of perseverance, kind of self-doubt, all kind of introspection as far as what mental health can do to a person and how it can make them feel, and how you can overcome that if you just keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. So I loved the story in this. Maddie, or I believe the main character's name was Madison. Madeline. I was close. Madeline's story to getting to the top of this mountain just to kind of escape herself in a way. and kind of also rediscover herself was really cool to me. So really solid game. I would, say any of these games in my top 10 are probably at least at minimum an 8 out of 10, which I consider to be a great game. And once we get sort down towards like the next few games, I think we're jumping into more of that 9 to 10 category. I'd probably say Celeste for me is a 9 out of 10 video game. So jumping back into my list here, a game I barely beat at the end of the year is a really great remake of an old game here is Silent Hill 2. So Silent Hill 2, obviously a game that released back on the PlayStation 2 era of consoles, highly regarded as one of the greatest games of all time from many people. I'd never played it, so I could not corroborate this. I decided to pick up the remake when it was on sale around Black Friday. And as we jumped into the holiday season, this was the game I was playing. James Sunderland, I think he has a very fascinating story, and the performance was phenomenal in this game. The performance of James Sunderland was really, really great. So we got James Sunderland from the updated version, as well as James Sunderland from the old versions here. I think his character was fascinating as he's kind of going through this town, Silent Hill, that kind of calls to people with a lot of issues, it seems. I kind of read up on a little bit of lore on Silent Hill because this is the only game I've played, but Silent Hill kind of draws people to it and kind of shows them, things about themselves that they don't want to see or don't want to come to grips with. And in James's story about his wife and her illness and how he feels guilty about wanting his wife to be this when she can't be. She's sick, she's ill, and ultimately at the end, depending on which ending you get, you might feel better, worse, differently about James as a character. I got the In the Water ending, which I know I read up on kind of the developers' thoughts, and a lot of the developers thought that the In the Water ending was the true ending of the game. That can be debated. I think coming from the developers' mouths, that seems, definitive enough for me. And it also maybe tells some things about myself playing the game and how I played the game, and just kind of how I play video games in general. Is I don't want to miss anything, so I'm always checking up on certain things and kind of looking through different areas, looking at my inventory, and it's crazy how many different factors in a game can influence the ending if the developers put the time into it. Because I won't say much, but just looking at a specific item in your inventory too much, or by checking in on specific characters in the game too much, can influence which ending you get, which is really cool. After I finished the game and looked up, how to accomplish some of the other endings, I was like, oh, I did not realize that these minuscule things that I do in every video game, in this specific game, changed the outcome. But jumping back from that, the horror elements aren't so much of a jump scare. There are some moments where, ooh, loud noise, make you jump. But really, it's unsettling. Kind of the enemy design, the level design is unsettling. There's like some dark areas. The fog in Silent Hill makes it just, you can't see more than 20 feet in front of you. So it's always a kind of situation where you're like, what's next? And just kind of that whole thing really sets it home for me that this game is something special. And I kind of want to jump into that old Silent Hill 2 on the PS2 era stuff and see how it runs there, what differences there were. But the puzzles in this game were great. I think what puts it over the top for me is the storytelling, because at the end of the day, the puzzles and kind of the game flow is very repetitive. You go to location, you get locked in location, there's a specific chest or doohickey that you need to solve a puzzle for in order to grab the key to go to the next area, and it becomes kind of a fetch quest puzzle game, at a certain point where it feels a little bit repetitive. But at the end of the day, the story elements hit hard enough for me that it still jumps up to this on my list at number 5. So, really great game, really solid mechanics, really fun to play through. That's going to be my number 5 game from 2024. Number 4. Any Silksong enjoyers in this chat here? No, I didn't think so, because it will never, ever, 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 ever release. But I did play Hollow Knight last year for the first time, and I am now one of those fools that just is endlessly hopeful that we get more Silksong news. Hollow Knight was such an amazing experience. I think less from a, the gameplay is super tight, the platforming, the combat, the kind of pattern recognition of, hey, I know my boss is this boss that I'm fighting. I know what he's going to do. I just need to figure out how to get around that, how to maneuver myself. Oh, here's a new upgrade that lets me do that more efficiently. Everything like that. The gameplay is so tight. I think what really got me in this game is just the world building and kind of the lack of a story to where you kind of have to fit the pieces together. You're in this like civilization that is clearly decayed. You see that there is the Hollow Knight in the kind of egg section right at the beginning that you can walk up to and you can't access yet. But just kind of going through the world, seeing how it's decayed, seeing the tunnel system that you can fast travel through, seeing the enemies and how they interact with the world, the art style where it's kind of like multiple drawings layered together to make this beautiful world with a lot of different environments. The city in this game that you make it to eventually is really cool, the City of Tears. And then after you've beaten the game, the game is obviously very punishing at points. After you've beaten the game, there's extra content as far as, hey, here's some arenas you can do. Hey, you still have some upgrades you can max out. There's more of the, why can't I think of what they're called? The gems that upgrade your abilities. There's more of those to find. And then lastly, there is like the Pantheon. To get the Platinum Trophy, you've got to beat the Pantheon. I haven't done it. I've tried and tried and tried. I gave up on it a while ago, and I intend to beat that and get the Platinum in Hollow Knight eventually. But, whoo-wee, P5 is very, very, very unforgiving. It's, you die and you have to restart and rethink your strategy and be more careful. And once you die a couple times and get tilted, you start going fast. But I was definitely someone that played Hollow Knight and then immediately watched like 5 YouTube videos on the lore and kind of understanding it more. And I pieced together a lot of it while I was playing, but still, it's one of those games that really captures something that not many video games do, and it's that sense of, discovery and kind of figuring it out for yourself and maybe having your own interpretation on what the story means. So as far as gameplay goes, I can't say much more. The platforming and combat's very, very tight, and the store and lore building in this game is really cool. So I hope Team Cherry knows what the hell they're doing with Silksong. Obviously, they've announced it like 5 different times, and every single time it, doesn't release or we haven't heard anything. So looking forward to potentially seeing something like that in the coming year. I think it's got to be close, but I'll put on my clown nose and paint my face, whatever. It's an awesome game. You should play it, and then you can jump on the board with me as far as being excited for Silksong when that might be misguided. Number 3 on my list, holy hell, another game I did not expect to fall in love with. This, at the time when I was playing the game, I had it rated around my number 9 of the year, and after going through the finale, beating the game, it jumped up to number 3 on my list. We got over here, my cat is waking up and licking herself. There we go. Number 3 on my list is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. I played this back in 2020 when it released. I played about 20 or 30 hours and fell off of it, and I don't know what made me decide to want to actually jump into and complete it this time, but I didn't remember anything about the story other than like one or two things, and I didn't get far enough to really get spoiled on too much the first time around. So I figured, why not pick it up, play it again? And I've never really been a JRPG kind of guy. This is probably one of the only JRPGs I've ever really played. But dang, this game rules. This game, kind of reset my expectations for what games are. The story in this game is really great. The cast of characters that you are fighting alongside with and you play as all have their own unique personalities. They all have their own kind of you know motivations for why they're doing certain things, and they all have kind of a different approach for how you play with them and what their combat does and how their systems work. To a point where eventually you start to figure out really cool team compositions to fight your battles with. And those become extremely rewarding when you start figuring that out. Like, oh, if I use this move, it'll topple my opponent. And then if they use this, it'll daze them. And then I can hit a critical hit if I go from behind and position myself. So it's not a turn-based game like a lot of JRPGs tend to be, but it's more of a position-based game, and setting yourself up for success with your team means pulling in different team compositions, whether you have a healer or a bruiser or a tank to take a lot of damage. And then Shulk, the main character in this game, really takes the cake as far as like combat goes. I loved playing with Shulk and partnering myself up with Rhine and Dunban and Fiora towards the end of the game. Her combat was really cool. And then the story. The story was very unassuming for the first like 30 to 40 hours of this game. I was like, okay, I think I know what this is. It's just a big revenge story. You're, going after these people that hurt people you loved. And obviously, throughout the story, you're building relationships with the other team members in your party. And then like after that 30 to 40 hour point, you start to realize that some of these dominoes that were being set up are being toppled down in place for new dominoes to change completely what you thought the story was and how to react to things. So you're kind of God in this scenario, but also you're not. And I don't even think I can try to explain the story, but there's so much that happens, and it kind of is a story about expectations and destiny, and if people truly do have free will. And there's just a lot of stuff in this game. It's an insane time. Even if you don't like JRPGs, I try this game. If you have a free 60 to 70 hours over the course of however many months, days, whatever it may take for you to finish this game, I recommend it. As well, for it being a Nintendo Wii game up-res to the, Nintendo Switch, it looks awesome. The vistas in this game are really great. The art style is pretty good. I've seen the Wii art style, and it looks obviously very blocky and not as great of textures, but everything in this game really worked for me. By the time I beat it, I'd probably consider it a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10. All right, guys. That's my 8 games out of 10. I've got 2 games to go, and I'm going to, preface this by saying, I'm going to preface this by saying I think either of these games could be my number 1 this year. I think both of these games were perfect. These are both games I would consider a 10 out of 10. And for the sake of this, number 2 does not mean it's worse. It just means that I had to put them in an order, and I'll kind of explain why I did, but I don't think that there's many reasons to put one game over the other. For number 2 on my list this year, we have the Outer Wilds. This game released in 2019, and I had never heard of it really until this year. I'd never really tried to play it. But what I will say is that I can't tell you anything about this game. I need people to play this with a fresh mind and not knowing anything about it. The things I will say before I jump into my other game that's a 10 out of 10 is that this game is at its core just an exploration puzzle game. That's all it is. And it's kind of like a visual novel intermixed with that, because most of this game is reading and kind of learning and understanding the lore of what's happening. And like I said, I'm not going to tell you what any of that lore is, but just know as you discover this and play it, the payoff and the ultimate last few puzzles that you will encounter in this game lead to an end of the game and a kind of conclusion to the story that impacted me more than I ever expected a video game to. It just makes you feel something when you beat this game. Whatever emotions you may experience might be different than what I experienced, but what I noticed in this game is that it really makes you think about life in general. Just I teared up a little bit. Like, I don't tear up very often in general. I'm not much of a crier, but this game made me think differently about my perspective on things. And that's all I'll say. If you like exploration, if you like puzzles, and if you like kind of visual novels intermixed with that, a lot of reading and a lot of dialogue and a lot of puzzle solving, play the hell out of this game. It's about 20 to 25 hours to discover everything and get to the final ending. The sad thing about this game is that once you beat it, the next time you play it, it's not really a game you can replay, because it's a game you could beat in 10 minutes now with the knowledge you know. But going into it fresh with no knowledge is the best way. That's why I'm not going to tell you anything else about this game. Only that it is my number 2, technically. It could be my favorite game of all time. But I did put one other game here on my list that's a 10 out of 10. So kind of sharing that top spot for my game of the year is going to be I am Astrobot. Astrobot, that came out on the PlayStation 5 this year, is my number 1 game of the year. Kind of tied for number 1 based on how I'm comparing it to Outer Wilds, but this game does not profoundly make me question life or have any shedding of tears. This game is just pure gas the entire time. There's no stopping points in this game where you feel like you're in a lull or you feel like it's not exciting. There's always some sort of new mechanic to play with. There's always some sort of new thing to explore. There's always a bot to collect. There's really cool puzzles. There's really great video game ass mechanics nonstop for about 15 hours straight. With it being a 3D platformer, people think that 3D platformers can't be, this or they can't be that. And while the story in this game means literally nothing to me, the gameplay reminds me of being a kid again the entire time. So, if you like games that are just fun and you don't have to think about a story or intricacies like that, Astrobot's the perfect video game. The way it pairs with the DualSense controller is just incredible. If you don't have a PS5 or if you've never played a PS5 on a friend's system or whatever it may be, this controller is the shit when it comes to Astrobot, because the way it'll be me walking on metal and the controller will vibrate in such a way and will output sound that makes it feel like I'm running on metal in real life is incredible. If I run through like grass, it vibrates in a certain way. If I'm doing a mini game or kind of a side thing in this game that requires me to shoot, the triggers will resist it, and it's just the perfect way to play a video game, where everything immerses you into the experience the entire time you were playing. So with that, Astrobot and Outer Wilds are going to officially be tied for number one. And for the sake of this, Astrobot is just a game that is all gas, no brakes. Fun, fun, fun. Outer Wilds, I'm not going to tell you anything about. But it's kind of on the opposite spectrum where story takes precedent, reading and understanding take precedent. Gameplay is very important to traversal, but it's not on any sort of level that Astrobot is when it comes to the movement style and the platforming and things like that. So there you go. I hope to have another banger top 10 list at the end of this year. I've already beaten a few games that are really great and very well could make my list. I've got a list of games that I plan to beat this year, and that is kind of, taking precedent as far as my schedule goes. With the new releases and the Nintendo system being announced, my list is not going to get completed, but it is something to note. That I do have some stuff that I'm playing. I have some stuff I'm enjoying. I will go over what I'm playing in a future episode, as well as what I've beaten so far. But that's my top 10 list. Just to recap it really quick, honorable mention to Stardew Valley 1.6 update. Number 10, Animal Well. Number 9, Hades. Number 8, Tunic. Number 7, Ghost of Tsushima. Number 6, Celeste. And then the top 5, we've got at number 5, Silent Hill 2. Number 4 is Hollow Knight. Number 3, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Number 2 and 1 sharing that spot at the top, The Outer Wilds, as well as Astrobot. So if you have enjoyed anything that I've said here, take a look at those games if you haven't. Otherwise, you're doing yourself a disservice with some of those games because they are truly, truly amazing experiences. Jumping into segment number 2 of the show, now that we are 40 minutes in, and you've heard me yap for about 35 to 40 minutes specifically on my video games from 2024. We're looking ahead to 2025. It is currently January 20th as of recording of this episode, and on the 16th, last Thursday, the Nintendo Switch 2 was revealed. You can check out the video up above to watch episode 1, where I just kind of break down the Switch 2 trailer, talk about some stuff. Now I want to just get into some theory crafting on what I think is going to happen this year in 2025. So first thing I'll note, and the first thing that I want to touch on with the Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2 is that I think that there is still some gas out there for Nintendo Switch titles. Obviously, on the same day, last Thursday, they re-released Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. That was a Nintendo Wii game. So I think there's still some gas left. And with that being said, I think that there's a possibility for a Nintendo Direct at some point in February that just kind of lays out the rest of the Switch's life cycle, just kind of slaps it on the table, tells you what we're going to be expecting for the rest of this year. Whether that be, Metroid Prime 4, I think that's going to be a part of my Nintendo Switch 2 conversation. But that is technically a Switch 1 game. It's been announced as a Switch 1 game. I'd be very surprised if it didn't release on the Switch 1. Outside of that, I have no idea what else could be in that Nintendo Direct, but I think that there's definitely some loose ends that they need to tie up. And I think in that Nintendo Direct, they will mention, hey, we hope you saw our Nintendo Switch 2 reveal trailer. All of the games that you'll be seeing in this are for the Nintendo Switch 1, but they will all be playable in the Nintendo Switch 2 when that releases. Come back on April 2nd for more information on that console. So I think they're going to do something sort of like that, and we'll kind of see how that ends up going. But to discuss April 2nd and beyond is what I really want to do here. With the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct happening on April 2nd, I want to talk about what I think I'm going to see there, and then talk about the release schedule of games for the remainder of the year. I think that we get the Nintendo Direct for the Switch 2 in April, and then I think they kind of lay out, June, July, August, and then I think it's September at some point we get a second Nintendo Direct, that goes through the rest of the year as well as early into 2026 as well. Um, that September Direct might have more information on some games that are releasing this year, but I really think they're trying to set the stage for what is to come. I think they've got a ton of games up their alley and they are ready to fire all of those out, but they don't want to fire them out at the same time. So I think that Nintendo's going to have a really constant release cycle over the next couple years. So, April 2nd, we are tuning into the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. I think that the first thing we'll see is that they're going to show off the console once more, kind of in a similar fashion to what we saw with the reveal trailer. They're going to have some fun little animations. And I think they're also then going to go into depth on the specs of the console. So, how powerful it is compared to the Switch 1. I don't think they really try and compare it to anything outside of that. I just think that they want to emphasize that there is a big step up in quality after these 8 years since the Switch arrived. I think that's the biggest thing that they start with. And then I think outside of that, they also explain, I don't think they're going to get too technical on specs. I think they're going to explain a few things saying this is a bigger, better Switch, basically. Here's what is inside of it. And I think they also touch on, AI upscaling with DLSS. I know that they're using an NVIDIA chip based on the leaks, whether you believe them or not. So I think that there's going to be some talks about the power level compared to the Switch 1 and what we can expect that power level to do. Secondly, I think that they are going to release or launch some trailers for some titles, whether that be for the remainder of the year or specifically for the launch. I think there's a bit of both, but I think they do announce the launch lineup of games that we can expect to see when the system goes live. And for me, I think Mario Kart is a no-brainer. I'm just going to call it Mario Kart because I don't know if Nintendo is going to call this Mario Kart 9 or if they're going to call this Mario Kart 10, because I know Mario Kart Tour released and they count that as an official release whether you like it or not. I'll be referring to it simply as Mario Kart until we have more information there. And then I think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be announced as a cross-gen release title. So it's going to release on the day of the Switch 2 and be available with both a Switch and a Switch 2 copy to purchase. So similar to how Breath of the Wild functioned at the Switch's launch. I don't know. Everything about Metroid Prime 4 just points me in that direction. What I'll say is that Metroid Prime 4 was announced as a Switch title back in 2017. There was a very, very short teaser. We heard nothing about it. There's been studio changes, development changes, everything like that. Finally got a trailer last year, which means I think that we're getting close enough that I think that this game will launch with the Switch 2 and be a title that can be purchased on either the Switch or the Switch 2. If I think that's a good idea or not, I don't know. But I think that there is a certain subsect of fans that obviously will buy Mario Kart, but they're more of the single player. They want something, some banger to play right at launch. And I think Metroid Prime 4 could be that, just with how much hype it's received over the years with it being delayed and pushed back and no one knows what the hell's going on. I think Metroid is probably at an all-time high as far as recognition. So I think that could be an option. I personally would pick up both at launch. I just played Metroid Prime for the first time. It was great. And obviously I'm a Mario Kart enjoyer as well. So looking forward to playing that at launch. So those are my 2 launch titles. My third launch title is some quirky ass Nintendo game similar to 1-2 Switch that shows off the optical sensor on the Joy-Cons and probably a bunch of other mini games that display the power and capabilities that the Switch 2 has to offer. So, excuse me. Basically, Nintendo always does this. They had Wii Sports as kind of a demo for the motion controls. They did, I don't know anything about the Wii U, but I think they had some Nintendo-ass launch titles that were mini games around the Miis and things like that. The Switch had 1-2 Switch. I think the Switch 2 gets something similar, where it's like a $30 or $40 title couple mini games, fun time for a couple hours with friends, but then outside of that, never really gets touched, never really gets talked about. Outside of that, they will release the date of the console release as well as when pre-orders go up. My predictions for that are going to be, I was looking at Fridays because I know that they typically will launch consoles on like a Thursday night. Friday is kind of the typical deal there. I think either May 30th, Friday, or June 6th are my two biggest guesses. I think late May, early June is right around that window where I think that the console will launch. I don't think it matters when it does launch. It's going to sell gangbusters no matter what. So that's my prediction. May 30th or June 6th. You heard it here first. I'll come back to this video when that direct happens and when we get official dates, just because I'm curious on how I predict these things as well. I think there will be a reveal of an additional launch color. Obviously, in the trailer we saw, there was the red and blue Joy-Cons. The Switch 1 had a gray Joy-Con and a red and blue Joy-Con option. I think that there is a second colorway that we'll see in this direct. As well, potentially a launch edition with Mario Kart, bundled, not bundled into the price, but you buy it, it's a special edition Switch. Maybe Mario Kart is included as a digital copy, but you also pay the $60, $70 more, whatever that may be. So maybe a third edition at launch. I think that might be getting a little too crazy for Nintendo, but I don't know. That's a possibility. And then the last thing I think is just showing some additional games, whether that's third-party or first-party games. Specifically, I do think that we get the first, at least, teaser for a 3D Mario game that will release this year around the holiday season. My guess is October. And then I think that we'll get something on a Legend of Zelda game. I think that there's been a Legend of Zelda game every single year of the Switch's life cycle, whether it be a remake or something along those lines. There's been something nearly every year, and I think they're going to keep to that just because they know it sells like crazy. If I had to guess, Twilight Princess, Wind Waker combo, and it releases cross-gen. Because I don't think that the Switch 2 is going to do anything to those that the Switch 1 couldn't handle. So I think that there will be a cross-gen release. It might just release as a Switch 1 title that you can then play on the Switch 2. I think that that's going to be the case for a lot of these games that were in production already. Maybe we'll see something different than that. But I think that there's going to be a number of games that were released or planned to release on the Switch 1 that will still do so, but they'll market them towards the Switch 2 audience. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts. Please do leave comments if you guys have opinions, and I will try and respond to as many of those as I can. But that's kind of my prediction for the Nintendo Switch April 2nd show. Is those were what I expect to see. So to recap that, I think Mario Kart 9 or 10 or just Mario Kart is announced officially as the launch title. They'll show off the gimmick, what the new gimmick is. Metroid Prime 4 is announced as a launch title, but it's going to be cross-gen with the Switch 1, and then there will be a Switch 2 version with enhanced, graphics or, DLSS upscaling to 4K or whatever it may be. Maybe it uses the optical sensor on the mouse for aiming. Who the hell knows? But those are the two big titles I think we'll get at launch. And then I think that there's going to be some quirky Nintendo game. So 3 launch titles, Mario Kart, Metroid Prime, quirky Nintendo game with stupid mechanics that people play for 2 hours and are done with. The console release date will be announced as well as pre-orders. Pre-orders will probably go up that week of April 2nd. And then the launch date, I'm predicting May 30th or June 6th. One of those 2 Fridays. Showcase the specs of the console. I think that's where they start. Just saying, hey, this is a more powerful Switch. Here's the boring stuff really, really quickly. Here's the optical sensor. Here's what that does. Magnetic Joy-Cons, blah, blah, blah. The specs. Exactly what we'd expect it to. Reveal an additional launch color alongside of that. And then I think they show some additional games, whether that be a 3D Zelda remake. 3D Mario will be shown in some capacity. I can't see a world where that's not a year one title for the Switch. And then they'll probably close it with maybe some third parties, one of their montages of what else you can expect to play on the Switch 2. And that would probably be the end of that show. I think it's going to be about a 40-minute direct, maybe longer, since it's this console release, but most Nintendo Directs are about 40 minutes, and those are usually just games. So 40 minutes is my prediction. That's my Switch 2 predictions. Please leave a comment if you agree, if you think there's some different things I could discuss there. More than happy to take suggestions for future discussions. So those are my two big segments. I think in a typical run of show, I have some smaller segments that are about 5 to 10 minutes that I want to cover. For this episode, I just had a lot on these two things specifically that I knew were going to take up a lot of time, so that's why I went into those. So reminder, as I discussed at the beginning of the episode here, release schedule for these. I plan on recording on Saturdays and hopefully getting the video up on Saturday. And then, if not, I'll get it up Sunday. I'll get it up whenever I'm able to. The plan is to release Saturdays, and then starting Sunday through the rest of the week, you can find me on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, whatever. I'll post in as many places as I can. And I'll link my socials in the video here so you can see those. But please do consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel if you liked what you heard or want to hear more. I want to make this just kind of a casual community thing. Like I said, I don't expect anything from this, but I would love to have some conversations at least. If you disagree, agree, whatever it may be. Again, I'll post my socials in the description of this video here in case you want to follow me elsewhere. Otherwise, this has been Bork with the Bork Report here on Bork News Network. Bork, Bork, Bork.